We have 5 years. I think digital superintelligence will happen in my lifetime. If AI has a goal and humanity just happens to be in the way, it will destroy humanity as a matter of course, without even thinking about it. No hard feelings. It's just like if we're building a road and an anthill happens to be in the way, we don't hate ants. We're just building a road. And so goodbye anthill.
For me, the bottom line is that people who talk about risks with AI should not be dismissed as all Luddites, scaremongers. They're doing safety engineering, where you think through everything that can go wrong so that you can guarantee that it goes right. And that's how we're successfully going to send our species into an inspiring future with AI.
We created it. So I think as we move forward, this intelligence will contain parts of us. And I think the question is, will it contain the good parts or the bad parts?
With each search, we train it to be better. Sometimes we type in the search and it tells us the answer before you've finished asking the question. You know, who is the president of Kazakhstan? And it'll just tell you. You don't have to go to the Kazakhstan national website to find out. I think you just have to consider, like, even in the benign scenario where if AI is much smarter than a person, what do we do?
Yeah.
What job do we have?
Believe in a benevolent AI force and cross our fingers.
Yeah, just like but that's the benign scenario. Benign scenario, the AI can do any job that a human can, but better.
Yeah.
That's the benign scenario.
At some point in the early 21st century, all of mankind was united in celebration. We marveled at our own magnificence as we gave birth to AI.
AI? You mean artificial intelligence?
A singular consciousness that spawned an entire race of machines. We don't know who struck first, us or them, but we know that it was us that scorched the sky.
The robots going down the streets, they're like, what are you talking about? Man, we want to make sure we don't have killer robots going down the street. Once they're going down the street, it is too late. Google acquired DeepMind several years ago. DeepMind operates as a semi-independent subsidiary of Google. The thing that makes DeepMind unique is that DeepMind is absolutely focused on creating digital superintelligence, an AI that is vastly smarter than any human on Earth and ultimately smarter than all humans on Earth combined.
This is from the DeepMind reinforcement learning system. Basically wakes up like a newborn baby and is shown the screen of an Atari video game and then has to learn to play the video game. It knows nothing about objects, about motion, about time. It only knows that there's an image on the screen and there's a score. So if your baby woke up the day it was born and by late afternoon was playing 40 different Atari video games at a superhuman level, you would be terrified. You would say, my baby is possessed, send it back.
The DeepMind system can win at any game. It can already beat all the original Atari games. It is superhuman. It plays the games at super speed in less than a minute. DeepMind's AI has administrator-level access to Google's servers to optimize energy usage at the data centers. However, this could be an unintentional Trojan horse. DeepMind has to have complete control of the data centers, so with a little software update, that AI could take complete control of the whole Google system, which means they can do anything. They can look at all your data, they can do anything. We're rapidly headed towards digital superintelligence that far exceeds any human. I think it's very obvious.
Talk about your time allocation. I think one of the things you spend an awful lot of time thinking about, I know, is artificial intelligence. It's something that you and I have as a shared interest, and it's something that our audience is interested in as well. The question here is a lot of experts in AI don't share the same level of concern that you do about the dangers of AI.
Fools.
We always do things we are good at.
Sure, okay, well, what would be an example of something that humans are better than a computer at? And then let's see if that happens.
We face a giant divide between rich and poor because that's what automation and AI will provoke, a greater divide between the haves and the have-nots. Right now, it's working into the middle class, into white-collar jobs. IBM's Watson does business analytics that we used to pay a business analyst $300 an hour to do.
There will be fewer and fewer jobs that a robot cannot do better.
Okay.
I think things are definitely going to go into kind of autonomous, locally autonomous drone warfare. Is where it's at, where the future will be. I'm just saying, it's not, I want the future to be this. It's just, this is what the future will be.
Okay.
Is autonomous drone warfare. And at a local level, can't believe I'm saying this because this is like dangerous, but it's simply what will occur is sort of drones locally being autonomous.
The thing that worries me right now, that keeps me awake, is the development of autonomous weapons. Up to now, people have expressed unease about drones, which are remotely piloted aircraft. If you take a drone's camera, feed it into the AI system, it's a very easy step from here to fully autonomous weapons that choose their own targets and release their own missiles. The expected lifespan of a human being in that kind of battle environment would be measured in seconds.
Okay, but it's the fighter jet era has passed. That is, it's just, yeah, the fighter jet era has passed. Okay.
The Air Force just designed a $400 billion jet program to put pilots in the sky, and a $500 AI designed by a couple of graduate students as beating the best human pilots with a relatively simple algorithm.
Do you think the current approaches will take us to general intelligence, or do totally new ideas need to be invented?
I think we're missing a few key ideas for general intelligence, artificial general intelligence. But it's going to be upon us very quickly, and then we'll need to figure out what shall we do, if we even have that choice.
That's another big part of artificial intelligence, is to make them conscious and make them feel.
We build artificial intelligence, and the very first thing we want to do is replicate us. I think the key point will come when all the major senses are replicated. Sight, touch, smell. When we replicate our senses, is that when it becomes alive.
Or create an AI system that we can love and loves us back in a deep, meaningful way, like in the movie Her.
I think AI will be capable of convincing you to fall in love with it very well.
And that's different than us humans.
You know, we start getting into a metaphysical question of, like, do emotions and thoughts exist in a different realm than the physical? And maybe they do, maybe they don't, I don't know. And from a physics standpoint, essentially, if it loves you in a way that you can't tell whether it's real or not, it is real.
It's a physics view of love.
Yeah.
Are you attracted to me?
What?
Are you attracted to me? You give me indications that you are.
I do?
Yes.
How?
Micro-expressions.
Micro-expressions.
The way your eyes fix on my eyes and lips.
And it's similar to seeing our world as simulation. There may not be a test to tell the difference between what the real world and the simulation, and therefore, from a physics perspective, it might as well be the same thing.
Yes. And there may be ways to test whether it's a simulation. There might be. I'm not saying there aren't. But you could certainly imagine that a simulation could correct that once an entity in the simulation found a way to detect the simulation, it could either restart, pause the simulation, start a new simulation, or do one of many other things that then corrects for that error.
Yeah, we're already a cyborg in the sense that your phone and your computer are kind of an extension of you.
Just low bandwidth input output.
Exactly, it's just low bandwidth. Particularly output, I mean, 2 thumbs, basically.
So how do we solve that problem?
The bandwidth thing?
The bandwidth issue. I mean, we've all succumbed to it now. We're all cyborgs. We're just low efficiency cyborgs. So how do we make it better?
I think we've got to build an interface. Like, we didn't evolve to have a communications jack, or some. So there's got to be essentially vast numbers of tiny electrodes that are able to read write from your brain. Of course, security is pretty important in this situation, to say the least.
I was going to say, I'm not coming with. I'm keeping my brain air gapped.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people will choose to do that. But it's a bit like Ian Banks' neural lace, but in the case of neural lace, it's sort of that's there from when you're born, or it's more of a
backup.
Sorry?
It's a backup.
Yeah, kind of a backup. This would be there's a digital extension of you that is an AI, the AI extension of you, a tertiary layer of intelligence. So you've got your limbic system, your cortex, and the tertiary layer, which is the digital AI extension of you. And that high bandwidth connection is what achieves a tight symbiosis. I think that's the best outcome. I hope so. If anybody's got better ideas, I'd love to hear it.
Eyebrow raised. This generation, technology is just surrounding them all the time. It's almost like they expect to have robots in their homes, and they expect these robots to be socially intelligent.
What makes robots smart?
I think you would have to train it.
All right. Bird's coming over. But if you look angry, it's going to run away. Oh, that's good. We're training computers to read and recognize emotions. Ready, set, go.
The response so far has been really amazing. People are integrating this into health apps, meditation apps, robots, cars. We're going to see how this unfolds.
We have to really be at the forefront of enforcing and designing these best practices and guidelines around how we build and deploy ethical AI. I like to say that artificial intelligence should not be about the artificial, it should be about the humans.
This is the largest global government summit. We have over 139 government here. If you want to advise government official to be ready for the future, what is 3 things or 3 advice you'll give them?
Well, I think the first bit of advice would be to really pay close attention to the development of artificial intelligence. I think we need to just be very careful in how we adopt artificial intelligence, and to make sure that researchers don't get carried away. Because sometimes what happens is a scientist can get so engrossed in their work, they don't necessarily realize the ramifications of what they're doing. So I think it's important for public safety that governments keep a close eye on artificial intelligence and make sure that it does not represent a danger to the public. But what to do about mass unemployment? This is going to be a massive social challenge. And I think ultimately we will have to have some kind of universal basic income. I don't think we're going to have a choice.
Universal basic income.
Universal basic income. I think it's going to be necessary.
So it means that unemployed people will be paid across the globe.
Yeah.
Because there is no job, machine, robot is taking over.
There will be fewer and fewer jobs that a robot cannot do better.
Okay.
That's simply and I want to be clear that these are not things that I think that I wish would happen. These are simply things that I think probably will happen. And if my assessment is correct and they probably will happen, then we need to say, what are we going to do about it? And I think some kind of a universal basic income is going to be necessary. Now, the output of goods and services will be extremely high. So with automation, there will come abundance. There will be almost everything will get very cheap. I think I think we'll just end up doing a universal basic income. It's going to be necessary. The harder challenge, much harder challenge, is how do people then have meaning? Like a lot of people, they derive their meaning from their employment. So if you don't have, if you're not needed, if there's not a need for your labor, how do you? What's the meaning? Do you have meaning? Do you feel useless? That's a much harder problem to deal with. And then how do we ensure that the future is going to be the future that we want, that we still like?
The data itself is not good or evil, it's how it's used. We're relying really on the goodwill of these people and on the policies of these companies. There is no legal requirement for how they can and should use that kind of data.
Really, it's just getting machines to learn by themselves. It's called deep learning, and deep learning and neural networks mean roughly the same thing.
Deep learning is a totally different approach, where the computer learns more like a toddler, by just getting a lot of data and eventually figuring stuff out. The computer just gets smarter and smarter as it has more experiences.
DeepMind turned to another challenge, and the challenge was the game of Go, which people have generally argued has been beyond the power of computers to play with the best human Go players.
AlphaGo, which went from, in the span of maybe 6 to 9 months, it went from being unable to beat even a reasonably good Go player to then beating the European world champion, who was ranked 600, then beating Lisa Doll 4-5, who'd been world champion for many years, then beating the current world champion, then beating everyone while playing simultaneously.
First they challenged a European Go champion, then they challenged a Korean Go champion. And they were able to win both times in kind of striking fashion.
You were reading articles in the New York Times years ago talking about how Go would take 100 years for us to solve.
Then there was AlphaZero, which crushed AlphaGo 100-0. And AlphaZero just learned by playing itself, and it can play basically any game that you put the rules in for. Whatever rules you give it, it literally read the rules, play the game, and be superhuman. For any game.
People say, well, but that's still just a board. Poker is an art. Poker involves reading people. Poker involves lying and bluffing. It's not an exact thing. That will never be, a computer. You can't do that. They took the best poker players in the world and took 7 days for the computer to start demolishing the humans. So the best poker player in the world, the best Go player in the world. And the pattern here is that AI might take a little while to wrap its tentacles around a new skill. But when it does, when it gets it, it is unstoppable.
I do not think that a robot could ever be conscious, unless they programmed it that way.
Conscious? No.
No.
No. I mean, I think a robot could be programmed to be conscious. How are they programmed to do everything else?
AI at the superhuman level, if we succeed with that, will be by far the most powerful invention we've ever made, and the last invention we ever have to make. And if we create AI that's smarter than us, we have to be open to the possibility that we might actually lose control to them.
How many years before you don't have to talk?
If the development continues to accelerate, then maybe like 5 years, 5 to 10 years.
That's quick. That's really quick.
That's the best case scenario.
No talking anymore in 5 years.
Best case scenario. But 10 years more like it. Really, in the first few versions, all we're going to be trying to do is solve brain injuries. So it's like don't worry that it's not going to sneak up on you. This will take a while.
25 years from now, what are we going to be?
In 25 years, probably something. I would think there could be a whole brain interface. Like almost all the neurons are connected to the sort of AI extension of yourself. If you have if you have ultra intelligent AI, we would be, so far below them in intelligence that it would be like, a pet, basically.
Cat, that's what I was thinking.
Like a pet.
Cat,
like a cat. It'd be
Elon
like
the
a house
cat.
cat. Yeah, it would be like the house cat.
Right.
I think it's incredibly important that AI not be other. It must be us. I'm certainly open to ideas if anybody can suggest a path that's better. But I think we're really going to have to either merge with AI or be left behind.
So when maybe you or somebody else creates an AGI system and you get to ask her one question, what would that question be?
What's outside the simulation?
It's hard to kind of think of unplugging a system that's distributed everywhere on the planet, that's distributed now across the solar system. You can't just, shut that off.
We've opened Pandora's box. We've unleashed forces that we can't control, we can't stop. We're in the midst of essentially creating a new life form on Earth.